Hey, I'm Alex, and this is TakeHold LV. If you read the article above, then you already know what a great place the San Juan Islands are. And if you didn't, then you're just going to have to take my word for it. I was pumped to visit, mainly to see orcas. There's a population of 70-plus southern resident killer whales that make their living feeding off the Chinook salmon in between the island chains. We did our homework, and we picked a week that historically should have yielded the highest saturation of orcas around the islands. But despite all of our research, when we got there were no orcas. Zero. Nowhere. Zip. Didn't take us long to learn what the culprit was. Salmon were to blame. Well, kind of salmon. Kind of us. It's complicated. These particular killer whales only eat salmon, and preferably only Chinook salmon. And these salmon are having a bad year. Really a series of bad years, which isn't good news if you're a hungry killer whale who needs at least 18 to 25 salmon a day. This region of water near the Fraser River has been home to enormous numbers of salmon long before we called it the Fraser River or even Washington. And now, thanks in large part to us, their future's in jeopardy. Salmon are what's known as a keystone species. Basically, this means they're really important, and not just if you're a killer whale. Kind of like how everyone knows if all the bees die, then we're not soon behind. Well, if we lose any of our keystone species, it's definitely not a good sign. So I'm here today to quickly give you an understanding of why the salmon population are in such rapid decline, and what everyone, you, me, your grandma, can do to help. Before I get there, just in case you're not aware of how intense a salmon's life is, let me give you a little salmon lesson. First, they hatch as fry, little baby salmon in freshwater streams. Then they travel up to 1,700 miles all the way to the ocean. Once they make it to the ocean, their bodies have undergone an incredible transformation from a freshwater fish to a saltwater fish. Once in the ocean, they live happy salmon lives until they've reached full maturity and return to the same river that they spawned from. They swim up the river and find the very spot that they hatched, quickly find a mate, spawn, and then die. With a life that epic, it should be easy to understand how any hindrance in their way could have a huge effect on the success of returning salmon. There are three major factors that play a role in the salmon crisis. 1. Habitat change. Habitat change can be as small as residents cutting down little shade trees by the riverbanks on their property, or as huge as climate change. The Center for Whale Research says that the biggest thing that we can do to help rebound the numbers of salmon is by tearing down ineffectual dams. Now, it probably doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand why a huge wall in the middle of a river would be a hindrance to salmon trying to get by, but there's a little more than meets the eye. Dams cause water to move very slowly. This is a huge problem for freshly hatched fry. They only have so much time to get to the ocean before their freshwater bodies turn into saltwater bodies. Slow-moving water can also cause returning adults to become disoriented and lost, leaving them exposed to predators longer. Once back in their home streams, returning adults don't eat, which means they only have as far as their reserves will take them, making time, yet again, crucial. Not to mention, slow-moving water can become overrun with bacteria and just downright toxic. A lot of dams have ladders, which are great in theory, but largely are engineered just wrong. In the wild, salmon make huge leaps up big waterfalls and have big pools of rapidly replenishing water to rest in between jumps. Man-made ladders don't mimic nature all that well. They offer small scoots in between levels with little crowded spaces in between the tiers to rest. All in all, these man-made workarounds can leave a lot of fish injured and become a breeding ground for disease. Lastly, in the case against dams is something called supersaturation. This is a phenomenon that occurs when the dam's spill crashes into the still pooling water below. Air bubbles are put under an enormous amount of pressure, and they're able to form these undissolved nitrogen bubbles that cause fish to become very ill. Number 2, hatcheries. Farm fish cause a huge threat to wild populations of salmon. These farm fish are riddled with diseases and lousy with lice, sea lice in fact. American studies still aren't back yet to attest to how devastating sea lice are to wild salmon, but in Norway, after a net ripped allowing tons of farm fish to escape and spread lice to the wild populations, they're noting their wild return numbers down up to 85%. Disease aside, escaped farm fish are affecting the wild populations with inbreeding. We've engineered farm fish to be really great at being food. They grow fast and they grow big, which is great if you live in a pool, not so great if you have huge migrations to accomplish in your lifespan. Farm salmon will breed with wild salmon and pass along traits that make them a much weaker fish and much less successful in returning and spawning. Normally, this is when nature would step in, glean out all the bad genes and stabilize the population. But with a bucket full of other problems, Nature might not have enough time to be able to correct the mistakes that we've made. Number 3, harvesting habits. Now, a lot of us are trying. There's great organizations out there making the science known to lawmakers exactly how many fish should be fished. But as long as demand is high, greed will dig its heels in. All of us need to push back and demand sustainable fishing and refuse unethical sourcing. I've got good news. You can help. Conserve your water use. Never dump waste into streams. Don't pour anything down the drain that you wouldn't be able to eat. Opt for greener cleaning supplies and less harmful chemicals. If you're geographically much farther from the problem, you can still help. Make sure that you never buy farmed salmon. And considering that climate change is a part of the issue, making small steps to be a little bit greener every day can do a huge amount of good. Lastly, speak up! Speak up! Tell your friends, tell your family. Make everyone you know aware. You don't need to live in the Salish Sea to call or write lawmakers and express your concerns. Every little bit helps. We've got a problem, and you can be a part of the answer. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time at TakeHold LV. There was a spider web that way.